Argentina, or those of you that aren't, it is a huge, well, two huge countries to cover. So it is going to be a bit of a whirlwind tour, and I won't be able to go into too much detail about each place, but hopefully it will give you an idea of the diversity of Chile and Argentina, because whatever your interests, Chile and Argentina really do have something for all of you. So sometimes it's just about opening your eyes up to what's there and seeing what takes your fancy, really, or where to start. As Charlie said, I used to live in Argentina, so I am very familiar with the country and also Chile, been to many times. So feel free to ask questions, but we're going to kind of, whirlwind tour, hopefully to inspire you all to think about going for the first time or returning to one of these amazing countries. So just as a kind of boring start, really, I suppose, what we're just going to do is just show you what we're looking at. So this is the continent of South America, and here you've got Chile, which is that long and thin country that you can see there, and you've got Argentina next to it. So actually, when we talk about both countries, they do mirror each other in terms of their landscape. And what's amazing about these two countries in particular is because they're so long, so about 2,500 miles from top to bottom, both of them, it means you really have every single landscape you can think of, as Charlie said, from desert to glaciers in the south. So hopefully that we'll see a bit of that as we go on this wonderful tour. So first of all, to introduce Chile, just to kind of show you that landscape and that diversity, I've just broken it up into 5 regions, really. Although there are 16 regions within Chile, there are 5 kind of areas which you can look at. The north, or the top, is the north and the Atacama Desert that we're going to look at. The middle is what we call the Central Valley, and also Santiago, the capital. Further south, you've got what we call the south, and lakes and volcanoes. And in the very south, you've got southern Patagonia. So we're going to visit all of those, as well as we're going to nip across to the Rapa Nui region, also known as Easter Island. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that if you watch a lot of documentaries as well. We're then going to take a trip through Argentina, and similarly, as I said, Argentina really mirrors Chile, because as you can see on this map, they're separated by that big grey line, and that is the Andes Mountains. And what happens with the Andes, well, what that means is that everywhere that you go, pretty much, you get this amazing backdrop of the Andes Mountains that are so dramatic. So it's all about landscape, all about scenery, these two countries. But similarly, Argentina pretty much mirrors Chile, and you've got the northwest, and that's very desert-like scenery in the north. You've also got Iguazu Falls, which we're going to touch on. Then you've got the Pampas region, which is the countryside, it's best explained, really, and the capital city of Buenos Aires in the middle. And then exactly the same as Chile, you've got the south, lakes as well. Sorry, that shouldn't say volcanoes, it should just say south and lakes. There's no volcanoes on the Argentinian side. And then you've got southern Patagonia as well. So once you've got your head around what the kind of topography and what the landscape looks like, you will then be able to see where you might like to go. So I'm just going to move that over there. Perfect. So let's go on a typical journey through Chile and Argentina. So first of all, you obviously need to get there. Well, we're going to start our trip in Chile. So we're going to fly from the UK direct to Chile, to Santiago, with British Airways if you want to take a direct flight. That direct flight is 14 hours. Otherwise, you can take another airline, indirect via Europe, and that's anything from 15 to 16 hours to get there. It's pretty simple, especially on the BA direct flight. When you get to Chile, you will arrive into the capital city, which is Santiago. And we generally recommend 2 to 3 nights in the capital. And that's for many reasons, but it's a beautiful setting for a city, as hopefully this picture demonstrates. Those Andes mountains that you see there are the backdrop, because over the other side of those mountains is Argentina. but because Chile is so long and narrow, pretty much everywhere in Chile you get the backdrop of the Andes, and it's incredible, as you can see here. The city of Santiago itself is a really, really beautiful city. Very green, very clean, lots of parks, and lots of cultural aspects as well. So all these things that you can do: museums, shopping, cultural hotspots, galleries, nightlife, restaurants, really nice hotels. It's a really, really nice city to explore for a couple of days. Once you have explored Santiago City for a couple of nights, we are going to head north, and we are going to head to the Atacama Desert, the highest, driest desert in the world, in fact. Now, although on this map it looks pretty close, it's pretty far, it is most of the time a plane ride. You could go by car, but it's a 2-hour plane ride from Santiago up into the north to a place called Calama, and then a 1.5-hour road transfer to get to the heart of the Atacama Desert. This is just, this is my picture actually. Oh, I beg your pardon, this is my picture. But the Atacama Desert is a beautiful, beautiful place for any of you that love landscape, scenery, photography, outdoors, all of those things. It just is one of those really kind of wow places that so many clients come back and rave about, really. Some of the attractions that you can do there, so we'd recommend 3 or 4 nights in the Atacama, and you can visit some of these main attractions. The Moon Valley, the top left, the Death Valley, both viewing platforms that are great at sunset or sunrise, the most amazing kind of photography opportunities up there. The geysers, so bottom right you can see the geysers there, which is a great tour that you can do. The salt flats in the bottom left, and also the lagoons as well. So again, great photography opportunities, and just really remote places, just all about scenery really. So if that's your cup of tea, as well as archaeological little villages and an insight into their culture, this is where you want to head. Some of the activities you can do in this area, so stargazing, they've got some amazing observatories up there, hiking, horse riding, spas, biking, overland tours, all those kind of things. So if that interests you, then the Atacama is where you should head. Lots of lovely accommodation types. It's like stepping back in time in the Atacama. It's amazing. Everything from rustic to 5-star luxury. So something for every type of person that wants to visit. So we've been to the Atacama, and now we are heading to Easter Island. Now, the only direct flight that you can take from Easter Island is from Santiago. And so therefore you would have to fly back down to Santiago and then across to Easter Island. Now, it's not just off the coast, unfortunately. It's a 5.5-hour flight from Santiago to reach Easter Island. So normally we just put an overnight stop back in Santiago for ease and comfort. But I tell you, the 5.5-hour plane ride is worth it to get to Easter Island. It is one of the most incredible places on earth. And it just is so remote and so mysterious that I always tell everybody that they should go. You're not going to fly 5.5 hours just for a night or two, so we recommend 3 or 4 nights on Easter Island. And if you're wondering what Easter Island holds, well, it's all about their culture and these amazing statues, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with or have seen on the David Attenborough documentaries on TV. There are about 1,000 of these Maori statues on the island of all different shapes, sizes, numbers. It's quite incredible. But you can visit some of the attractions, and they're written on the screen there. Yeah, it's all about learning about the culture and the history, which to me felt very much more Polynesian than Chilean, really. Yeah, so it feels almost like more of a Pacific island for any of those of you who've been to kind of Fiji and those kind of islands. But it's incredible, and it's a volcanic island, pretty small, 63 square miles, but it's all about culture. So if that's your thing, then that's where you want to visit. On top of the statues and the historical element, you've also got amazing gastronomy. The seafood there was amazing, and everything's very fresh as well. You can also visit kind of cultural shows of the people that live there. There's about 3,000 people that live on the island now. So it's really interesting and definitely worth visiting. And again, lots of options for accommodation. Most of the accommodation is pretty rustic and family run, which is really nice. The people are super friendly, but there is a 5-star option as well if you want it, which is the picture in the bottom left. All have amazing views, normally out over the ocean. So again, pretty amazing. So a quick stop in Easter Island, and now we are going back to the mainland of Chile, and we are heading south. And we are heading south to what's called the South Lakes and Mountains and Volcanoes. So back we go to Santiago, 5.5 hours, and then we will need to fly down 2 hours to get to the Lake District. And the point of entry for that is Puerto Montt, or the main airport down there. Now, this region, if you can see on the map, on the blue and white map on the left, you can see this region, which is a few hundred miles from top to bottom, is all about lakes and national parks. So if you've explored national parks in other countries, this is the area that you want to go to. And beautiful blue turquoise lakes with the dramatic Andes in the background. And national parks. There are 8 national parks just within this map here, within a couple of 100 miles. So if you love outdoors, if you love walking, hiking, lakes, activities, adventure, this is where you want to head. So there's a couple of options for this area of the Lake District. One is to base yourself in one of the areas and do some day trips, either with a guide or kind of on day trips out and back from this destination. So most people will pick this town, which is called Puerto Varas, which is on one of the lakes, and it's a beautiful town with lots of things to do, restaurants, hotels, etc. And you might base yourself there for 3 or 4 nights and see the surrounding area. Alternatively, you may want to I'll come back to this slide in a second. You may want to self-drive this area and hire a car. And what people do is hire a car from one airport. So they might fly into one of the airports. There's a couple of airports in this area. Hire a car, drive a couple of 100 miles over 3, 4, 5 nights. And then drop the car off either 200 miles north or 200 miles south. It's up to you. And that's really if you're a bit more adventurous, if you prefer independent travel, perhaps you've done self-drive in Canada or New Zealand, and you really enjoyed that flexibility to stop off, take photos, stop where you want, then self-drive might be a better option for you. So 2 options, sorry, just going back. If you choose to stay in one place and you prefer to do tours, be guided, or you don't like self-drive, then these are the attractions in that area. So you've got local waterfalls, volcanoes, you've got an island called Chile Island, which I would describe like Wales, for any of you that like Wales. There's lots of sheep, but also lots of amazing buildings. You can see in the bottom left there, that's Chile Island, and they've got all these amazing buildings on stilts. They're really colourful, so really quite picturesque as well. Then you can explore the national parks and the lakes. So it really is a bit like the French Alps, the Swiss Alps. It's really quite stunning, this area. You can also access Argentina from here as well. You can either cross, this is one of the crossing points by boat that you can actually cross over. So on this trip I'm taking you through, we're not going to cross over, but bear in mind you could cross over to the Lake District in Argentina, which is quite similar if you wanted to. Activities you can do in this area, you've got hiking, self-driving, volcano climbing, mountain biking, horse riding, rafting, kayaking. So if you are of the adventure type, then everything that comes with lakes, mountains, rivers, horses, animals, this is the area to do it, because it really is quite a stunning location to do all those kind of activities. And if you prefer to self-drive, these are some of the stops that you can make, and we would book accommodation in all those areas, quite rustic accommodation along the route, but you can stop off and spend a few nights making your own way at your own pace, leisurely, doing a self-drive from north to south or south to north, whichever you prefer. So we can help you with a route and give you a map and guide. This is some of the accommodation you'd expect. So if you space yourself in Puerto Varas, which is the main town, there's all sorts of accommodation from kind of 2-star to 5-star luxury. And if you decide to self-drive, well, the accommodation options are a little bit more rustic, but much more remote locations, and that might also be kind of your thing, because you might not, they're kind of small hotels with kind of 5, 6, 7 rooms, family run, and you might not see many other people, which might be just what you want on this. So lots of different types depending on which option you kind of opt for, really.
Jess, what's that extraordinary place in the middle bottom there?
So that is a hotel called Notha Fagus, which is the name of a special tree that exists in the national park down there. And yeah, it is basically like staying in a tree house. It is just crazy, but it's really cool. It's a bit quirky, I have to say, and it's got kind of like tree trunks running through rooms and things. So it's not everybody's thing, but I loved it when I stayed there, and it's in the middle of this national park, the Huilo Huilo National Park. It's stunning. So yeah, very cool.
Great.
So that is a little taste of kind of the south and the Lake District. And now we are going to head to southern Patagonia. Just to be clear, we were just in Patagonia, but this is what we call southern Patagonia. So southern Patagonia is really all about glaciers and fjords, as Charlie mentioned at the beginning. So very different landscape from the lakes and mountains that you just saw. In order to get there, it's pretty far. It looks pretty close on a map, but again, it's another 2 hours by plane from where we were in the Lake District down to this part. And you fly into an area called Punta Arenas, which hopefully you can see on the map there, where that plane is. And then in order to transit to the highlight of the area, which is called the Torres del Paine National Park, it's another 2 to 5 hours by road, depending on which part you visit. So again, that's quite a big range, but it really depends on what you do in this area. But you can see that the area is so big, by the kind of distance and by the amount of transfer time. So we're going to head to the Torres del Paine National Park now. In southern Patagonia in Chile, and we're going to spend roughly 3 to 5 nights here, depending on how much interest you have in this area. But you can see on the screen here, it is really a stunning national park, and it's called Torres del Paine, which in English, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, means granite towers. And for those of you that have worked it out, in quite a few of these pictures, you can see 3 huge granite towers, which is what the park is named after. So Torres del Paine is those 3 granite towers. And really, this national park is my favorite place in Chile. It is just absolutely mind-blowing. Everything is so dramatic. The mountains, the Andes are just incredible, and you get these glacial lakes that you can see in some of those pictures at the bottom, which make these turquoise colors and amazing photography opportunities as well. For hikers, if any of you love hiking, there are a couple of really good, relatively challenging hikes called the W and the O Trek. But those of you who just like landscape and kind of seeing beautiful national parks, you don't have to do big trekking. You can just view the wildlife, the lakes. You can do that by boat. You can do that by walking, and you can also do that by kind of land tours as well. So lots of options as well for activities in this area. Accommodation wise, you can stay within the national park. You do pay a premium to do that, but you can you can pay a premium to do that, and they have everything from amazing glamping, as you can see on the right, and eco lodges, to 5-star luxury lodges on the left, with the most incredible views. So I was fortunate enough to stay in one of those, and I've also done the camping as well. So both options are amazing, but yeah, everybody is different and has different tastes, and that's what we cater for. So yeah, you can stay in the park. However, if perhaps budget or taste doesn't want to do that, there are also towns outside the national park where you can stay, where there are kind of 2, 3, 4-star options for hotels, and then you can just make the journey into the national park and do all the excursions. However, you would then have kind of a 2.5 hour journey each direction into the national park to be able to do that. So that's why there is a premium for the park. Okay, this is the perfect opportunity now to cross over into Argentina. So we can cross into Argentina by road at this point, which is perfect. But you can also cruise around over to Argentina. So you would either drive over from the national park up to El Calafate over here, or you would come down to Punta Arenas, where you flew into, and you can actually take a 3 to 4 day cruise around the fjords, through the fjords here, around what's called Cape Horn, which is the southernmost part in the world. It's a cape, and you cruise around, and you would come into Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city in Argentina. That's an option. Not going to go into the cruise option in too much detail, but if that appeals to you, then do speak to Charlie. But we're going to go across from the national park where we just are. We're going to drive across 8 hours over the border into Argentina in a place called El Calafate. And El Calafate is basically famous for this amazing glacier called Perito Moreno. And you don't get the same kind of glaciers on the Chilean side. So this is really worth visiting. It's one of those wow places in Argentina. 2 to 3 nights is the perfect amount of time to see the glaciers and experience Argentina, your first taste of it. In this area, you would visit the glaciers, and also you can hike on the glaciers as well if you want. You've got amazing hiking on near to this area as well, at Mount Fitzroy, some of you might have heard of, glacial lakes, ice trekking, and also there's some really amazing Patagonian ranches that exist here. So you can go and stay on a ranch and see how the Argentinians do things, which is pretty cool as well. Once we've visited the glaciers, we are then going to go up to a place called Peninsula Valdez, which is on the east coast, up here where my arrow is. And it's a peninsula, as the name would suggest, 3 hours from where we just were. And it's really famous for marine wildlife. So if any of you love marine wildlife, or love or want to see whales, so anything orcas, southern right whales, sea lions, dolphins, penguins, all kinds of things, then you want to go to this area, because it's full of marine wildlife. Best time to visit this area, though, is June to December. So it is kind of dependent on the time of year that you go. But if that fits within your time frame, then you can obviously go here. And this is what you would expect to see. So you can see the little map there. You'd visit the peninsula and see all the wildlife, and out on boats, and also on the peninsula on land as well. So you can do some tours. Also, for any of you, I'm sure you might have heard that there's some Welsh towns in Argentina, which is the weirdest thing ever. But they exist in this area, and they're on the mainland, not on the peninsula. But you can actually visit Trelew, that you can see here, and there's a couple of other small towns around there that are full of Welsh-speaking inhabitants, which is amazing. And I went to visit them when I lived there, and it's like being in Wales. So lots of Welsh tea houses and lots of Welsh people. So pretty incredible. But that's there if you want it. Okay. Couple of two more destinations to visit on our flying tour. So from Peninsula Valdez, we are now heading, so we were here, we're now heading on a 2-hour flight to Buenos Aires, the capital city, one of my favorite cities in the entire world, for many reasons, but really because it's such a cultural hub on the continent, and it's a really bustling city. It's got so much to offer. And for me, I mean, I say there typical stay 3 to 4 nights, but for me it's really 4, because if you've never been there before, there's so much to do. It's a bit like London, I always say, in the sense that it's got all these different areas. So a bit like how London has all these different areas for different interests and different types of people. And it's the same with Buenos Aires. So these are just some of the areas and attractions that you can visit in Buenos Aires, but all totally different. There's an arty area, there's a rich area like your Mayfair, there's a really hippie area, so all kinds of things that you can visit and attractions that you can see here. In terms of activities and what you can do, well, I mean, as I said, it's a real hub of things to do. So you've got everything that you'd expect from a city in terms of restaurants and amazing gastronomy, tango shows, sightseeing, so all the sightseeing you can do. But the amazing thing for me is the architecture and all the buildings that are there, because Argentina, well, Latin America in general, has a great colonial history from the Spanish and Portuguese, I should say, times. So there's a lot of interesting architecture and amazing buildings. The Opera House is stunning. The Government Palace, which is the red Casa Rosada you can see in that picture. So it's a really interesting city as well historically. So a city tour there is not just not very, it's not boring. It's, it's got so much history and so much life to it that it's a fascinating city that you should spend a few nights really. And lastly, we are going to head to the north and Iguazu Falls, which is basically one of the biggest highlights on the continent for me, on the whole of Latin America. And it's a 2-hour flight from Buenos Aires, the capital, and you're going to probably spend 1 to 2 nights here. You're probably not going to just visit the Argentinian side of the falls, but we will always recommend that you go over to Brazil as well to see the falls. They're totally different from both sides. Actually, in the top right, in this picture, I don't know, Charlie, can you see my mouse when I move it?
Yep, up the top right, yep.
Yeah, great. So in the top right, you'll see this walkway here. This is actually Brazil on this side. And on the right-hand side of this picture, this is actually Argentina. So from Brazil, you get this huge view of all the falls. And in Argentina, it's a lot bigger. So you actually get a much closer up view of all the different falls. There are about 275 falls in total, as well as the Devil's Throat, which is at the back, which is just this mighty, mighty fall, which you've never experienced anything like it, even if you've been to Niagara or Angel or any of those. It's incredible. So this is Iguazu Falls, and it's a must visit for me, for everybody that touches the continent. So you can visit Argentina, you can visit Brazil, you can also do some of the activities that are there as well. So visit the local bird park. It's in a national park, so as you can see from the pictures, it's surrounded by wildlife, bird life, and flora as well, and fauna. Once you've spent a couple of nights in Iguazu Falls, then it's time to depart. So you can either, and it's kind of equidistant really from Iguazu Falls, you can either fly back down to Buenos Aires, which takes 2 hours, or you can fly to Rio de Janeiro if you want to, also a 2-hour or just under 2-hour flight, if Rio has ever interested you. But we won't talk about that today. So that is kind of where we end the tour, and then you depart to the UK, either 13 hours, a bit shorter than from Chile, or 10 hours from Rio, so quite a bit closer to the UK. So that kind of gives you an idea of what a complete tour would look like. That tour we've just been on would probably need at least 3 to 4 weeks to do. So it probably wouldn't be that you would want to do all of that, because I appreciate that's a long time to be away for, but there may be elements, or you may want to just go to Chile or Argentina, or just do the north, or just do the south. So it's really up to you which bits you like the look of. Just before I finish, if it's okay, Charlie, just for a couple of minutes, just because I didn't really have time to touch on them, just as extensions, and just so that you know what's there, Chile and Argentina both have a wine region. So if you fancy staying on a wine lodge and experiencing the beautiful wine that is on offer in both countries, you can do that. And that is where I've circled on that map there. And if you like off the beaten track, there are areas in both Argentina and Chile which we can recommend, where they're perhaps a bit more remote. Perhaps you're more independent travelers, you don't like tourist destinations. Well, we can certainly offer some of those as well, and they're highlighted on the map as well. So just to kind of give you an idea, hopefully that little tour has given you an idea of how much there is in Chile and Argentina. But really, they both have something for everybody. So you can see here, if you're an adventurer, if you like outdoors, scenery, photography, culture, there's something for you. If you are into kind of more extreme sports, or even camping and hiking, that kind of thing, then there's certainly options for you. If you love self-driving, if you love being remote in the middle of nowhere, then there's so much space in Argentina because there's so much land. Particularly in the south, you'll love the off the beaten track stuff, and the scenery is just incredible. And if you love exploring, hiking, walking, wildlife, bird life, then again, there's plenty of opportunity for you. So if you're wondering when to go to these amazing countries, pretty much the rule of thumb, because they're in the southern hemisphere, is that they're the opposite season to us. So October to March is their spring, summer, and you'll get really good weather. Especially if you are going down to the south into Patagonia, we'd really recommend you go kind of November through to kind of February, March, just to make the most of the weather there. So just to kind of tie it up really, I apologise, I've spoken very quickly for a good 40 minutes. But just to kind of sum up who we are, I do this at the end because it's a bit boring. But as Charlie kind of introduced, we're very passionate about Latin America, and the business was built on having lived and worked over there. So a deep insight into the countries and the cultures. So we try to offer itineraries and experiences that really enhance the trip and really give you a feel for what those countries are like, and that's built from kind of first-hand experience. So but all the product and hotels we offer are highly recommended personally, if that makes sense. We also offer Costa Rica, obviously that's in Central America, and also we have a polar routes brand as well that Charlie can book as well, and that is offering expeditions down to Antarctica, and I was lucky enough to do that a couple of years ago, and it was really once in a lifetime. So any of you have thought of that as well, do let Charlie know. And as Charlie said, we work really closely with them. So if you want an itinerary to one of our destinations, Argentina, Chile, or another destination, then please let him know. And as he said, we can tailor something particularly for you with everything included, or we can also offer you escorted holidays in small groups where you are led by one of our tour leaders all the way around, and with other travelers as well. So it's quite a nice way to experience it. We also have this thing called Make Your Day Individual, where you pick which excursions you want to do on certain days, so you don't have to do the same excursions as everybody all the time. It's quite unique, so that's quite a good selling point for us. And that's it really. I appreciate it's armchair travel for now, but these trips are big trips, and we don't really book 2 or 3 months in advance anyway. Most of our trips are 12 months ahead because of the availability, and particularly in some of the locations, there's not a huge amount of options for hotels and availability. So yeah, we're quoting for 21, even 22. So there's nothing stopping you from quoting. Absolutely. So do get in touch with Charlie if you've got specific questions. I'm sure Charlie's going to open that up to you now. But yeah, nothing to stop you from booking a trip now for the far future, really. And we have really low deposits at the moment, which is a bonus, and also a kind of relax and book policy, so that if your trip were to get cancelled, then you can cancel it at any time. So it's nice and flexible. So that's it. I'm going to take a swig of water and let Charlie open it up really for questions, if anyone has any, really.
Brilliant, Jess. Thanks so much. That one amazing part of the world that is. It's just breathtaking, some of that. And just following on your point there about the flexibility, that's the feel we're getting across from more and more operators all the time at the moment. It's the lower deposits, being more flexible. And that's just the first of the couple of questions that came through on chat, just for you, Jess. The status at the moment. So are the BA flights actually running at the moment? Or when you're expecting them to get up and running? And also just, it's gone off the news now, but it was earlier on in the year, some of the unrest going on in Santiago in Chile. Is that something that, you had issues with, or was that something that you felt, you're comfortable with clients going through Santiago while that was going on?
Sure. So to answer the question regarding the dreaded C word, in terms of when flights, we expect them to be up and running. Argentina and Chile have announced their borders will be opening as of the 1st of September. So flights will be running from them. In fact, flights are still running in August, but we expect that they'll probably be delayed until September. So we are hopeful that from September, all things going well on our side, I suppose, in terms of FCO advice lifting, that trips can commence from September. We don't have a lot of people go to Argentina and Chile in September because it's still pretty cold.
Yep.
So the majority of them will be, we expect to be going ahead October, November onwards, and we don't foresee that, that changing. But yeah, I think, bearing in mind what's happening, and obviously if you did book a trip for this year, with the flexible policy, you can cancel free of charge at any time. So it doesn't, if you are thinking about this year, then you can take advantage of that. Otherwise, next year, BA schedule is all the same for Argentina and Chile.
Is that 3 days a week? Is it direct?
For
Santiago?
it's daily.
Santiago.
So yeah, for Santiago it's 4 times a week.
4 times a week.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we haven't had news that that's changing, so it may well change, but as far as we're aware, it's still the same. So yeah, so that's that. And then the unrest in Chile, that obviously did impact anybody that was in Chile at the time. Anyone that was in Santiago during that unrest was moved, and very quickly moved out of Santiago because we were monitoring the situation and it was escalating, and we didn't want to take that risk with our clients. So if anything like that happens, or escalated wherever you are, that's the benefit of booking through a tour operator. We look after you.
Absolutely.
So yes, we moved anybody out at that time. And what's happened over the past few months, COVID aside, is there are still pockets of issues within Santiago, but they're quite contained, and they're not really in areas where we would host clients, where the hotels are and where the kind of main sites are. So they're kind of pockets of areas, but it's very kind of it's kind of more peaceful than it was, certainly. So it's kind of de-escalated, I should say. Yeah, it's not as serious as it was, certainly, even 6 months ago. But we do monitor it very carefully, and because of that, we are confident to send people to Santiago, and have been for up until March, until lockdown.
And I'm guessing that as destinations, you regard them as pretty safe destinations. You're talking about the self-drive. We'd always talk about them as safe destinations people would feel comfortable in?
Absolutely. I think, Argentina and Chile, for those of you who haven't been to the continent at all, are probably two of the safest, because they're very developed. And because of that, they've got good infrastructure. There's good English level pretty much everywhere that we've been to today. And therefore, they are, safe, developed, and in terms of kind of the economic kind of situation, stability, they do feel very safe. So people are often surprised, I think, when they go, and people are very friendly. They speak English. It's all very safe, and roads are very safe. Yeah, I mean, in Chile, it's pretty much one road from north to south. But a lot of them are paved roads. I mean, if you go off the beaten track, or you go off into national parks, they're not going to be, but the big roads are paved roads. And yeah, it feels very, very safe. I mean, I backpacked Argentina when I was 19, quite a long time ago now, but by myself. I lived there for a year, and then I lived there for a further 6 months. So, and I've never had any problems, being a female on my own. I found it, so welcoming. People are so friendly. I've never had any issues, and likewise with clients. As long as you travel sensibly, then, and safely, you are not going to have any problems. Really, it's just in the big cities, a bit like London, don't show off your wealth or, your fancy cameras, etc. That's it. That's the only advice.
Great, thanks for that. Has anyone got any questions out there, or if you might need to unmute yourself if that's the case? If not, I've got a couple of other things I wanted to check with Jess. Has anyone got anything at the moment? Well, I'll push on for the moment then, Jess. I mean, just thinking on the wildlife side of things, you mentioned Valdez, you mentioned so Patagonia would be the wildlife would be quite a feature of Patagonia visits. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure.
And Iguazu for a totally different style of, a more tropical feel. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't say you go to Iguazu for the wildlife, really, to be honest. It's just birds, butterflies, what you get within a national park, really. So not any major mammals. The main places are the national parks, so Torres del Paine in Chile, and in Patagonia as well, and then the marine wildlife. You can see pumas in the national park in Chile if you time it well. So October, November time is a good time for pumas in Torres del Paine. And then, other mammals down in Patagonia, certainly. And then further down, obviously, and with Peninsula Valdez, you've got all the marine life, penguins, etc. Another really good place for wildlife in Argentina, if wildlife is really your thing, is a place called the Ibera Wetlands, which I haven't really touched on because it's quite unheard of, but it's the wetlands area in Argentina, not too far from Iguazu Falls. And it's where you stay in a kind of remote lodge, and you go out, and there's animals like caiman, a huge amount of species of bird life out there. So if you're into bird watching, then that's where you want to go. But it's a bit like a safari experience. So you go out and stay in a really remote lodge and experience the wetlands, and see the wildlife there. Otters, these amazing thing called capybara, which are like giant guinea pigs that go up to about your knee. So there's lots of wildlife, and if wildlife is really your thing, I would say look to somewhere like Brazil or Costa Rica, because they're the two countries for real wildlife lovers. But there's certainly wildlife to be seen in these countries for sure.
Okay. And then from a family point of view, if you're traveling with kids, let's just say older kids, but if you're traveling with kids, it's a pretty active, a lot of the areas are pretty active, pretty outdoorsy. I mean, where would you be directing people? Certainly, if it was just for a couple of weeks or something like that, what would you be highlighting?
Yeah, I mean, families obviously you have to bear in mind the distances, but certainly like Patagonia is great for families, adventure families, I would say, with the Lake District and all the activities that come with it, as well as, the hiking opportunities in the south as well. So yeah, I mean, that's a great trip for families. I mean, both countries are really family friendly. They cater for all tastes, budgets, and also, sorry, I don't mean budgets then. I meant like there's lots of different variations of restaurants, and food caters for all types of food, and there's hundreds of different types. So yeah, I mean, really, again, it depends on the interests of the family, but really I would say it's most dedicated to families that are adventurous, really, and love outdoors.
Okay. The just thinking then of the times of year as well, because obviously going down to Patagonia in the south is very much a southern hemisphere summer destination. But I'm guessing you can do, if you've only got if you've got a couple of weeks, but it was a different time of year, you could think about Atacama in the northern areas outside the summer. Does that work or not?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there are kind of, I suppose, the top half of Argentina and Chile, rather than the bottom half, is quite mild all year round. I probably wouldn't go in July or August. That's the coldest. But any time outside that, really, you can go to pretty much everywhere. It's pretty nice. And if you're not a fan of, heat, then actually it'd be quite nice. You're probably talking low 20s. In places like Santiago, Buenos Aires, perhaps a touch cooler, and then Iguazu Falls and Atacama Desert. Yeah, absolutely. They're below 20s, but perfectly pleasant for us UK.
Fantastic, yeah.
So yeah.
There's a question in there that's come up on the currency exchanges. I'm guessing that sort of, has that changed a lot in the last few months by mistake?
Well, I mean, to be honest, Argentina, it's come down a tiny bit in the last couple of months during COVID, but Argentina has never been better for UK to travel, the UK market to travel to. It is that the peso rate is just, for those of you that aren't familiar, but the Argentina is quite unstable with their kind of peso rate with the dollar. And so actually you get such great value for money when you're there. So for eating, drinking, traveling, taxis, and shopping, it is really, really good, a good rate. So yeah, there's never really been a better time to go. I'm just checking what the rate is today, really. But yeah, I mean, when I lived there, it was like 8 pesos to the pound, and 3 months ago it was 76 pesos to the pound. So it is, I mean, I lived there 10 years ago, but it really has, I mean, it's awful for them, but great for us, really.
The visitors, yeah.
And Chile's more stable, but it's still a good value for money when you're there. Yeah.
And obviously famous for its meats and things like that. How about getting around as a vegetarian?
Yeah, absolutely fine. I mean, they do love their red meat, and if you do like red meat, it is incredible. But as I said, in most places, you are going to get a good choice in most towns, unless you go off the beaten track. So it does really cater for everybody, whatever dietary requirements you may have. We have lots of we actually send lots of Indian groups to Argentina. We work with a group that organise it, and often they have dietary requirements, and we never have issues. So it's great. Yeah, it's really, really good. And Chile has a lot of fresh food because it's on a coastline. It has a lot of fresh seafood, a lot of fresh meat as well, particularly from Argentina and Uruguay, and really kind of fresh vegetables. Really, really fresh food. It's really good. So yeah, really good gastronomy there.
Good stuff. Is anyone else?
Oh, sorry, just checked the rate, and it's now 87 pesos to the pound, so it's even higher than it was.
Better today than yesterday. What? Yeah. Any other questions out there? Then anyone? Any other thoughts? Okay. I guess just the only last thing from me then on that was just on the accommodation standards. I mean, you've got a real range of accommodation there. Or all shapes and sizes to suit all budgets, or how would you put that?
Yeah, I mean, really, Argentina and Chile have something for everybody, depending on what your style is. A lot of the accommodation outside the major cities is in keeping with the location, which is, you know, what you're there for. And I think it, you know, it'd be an awful shame if they built a Sheraton in the middle of a big national park anyway.
Sure.
But you know, a lot of it's very characterful. A lot of it's boutique style, or you know, family run in you know, slightly off the beaten track places. But yeah, really, there is everything from, I would say, camping level to glamping, which we could probably consider like 2-star, up to 5-star luxury. If you do love your luxury, Chile is probably the best country on the whole continent for luxury hotels, and it has some of these amazing luxury lodges all over Chile, and on Easter Island, which basically, yeah, you can stay, and they're 5-star, and all inclusive, so they include all the excursions and food and full board. So yeah, there really is something for everyone, whatever you like. But for me, I love the kind of characterful places, and some of the more remote location, you know, hotels and lodges, because you get the most amazing scenery, and they're cheaper generally. So yeah, pretty cool.
Sure. Well, that's great. Any more questions out there? I can't see anything else on the chat. Okay, then. Well, I think we'll probably wrap it up there, Jess. And that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. It's yeah, your passion's coming through in the way you've taken us around those countries. It really is you know, they are amazing destinations, and yeah, we'd be really happy to help anyone if they want to make some plans there. So thanks for joining us, everyone. If you like the idea of these travel webinars, then please look out for our next one, which is in 2 weeks' time on Thursday the 16th. We've got the classic Greek Cycladic Islands in the middle of the Aegean, for just find out a bit more about those. And it'll be great if you fancy joining us for that. So thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks for joining us, and have a good evening. Take care.